order. Please rise for Mayor Michael Fougere.
Good morning, everyone. Please take a seat.
Your Worship, just before we get going, just to let you know, I do have Councillor Rice on the phone as well, so we actually have the vast majority of council here in attendance.
That's great. Thank you very much. And before we do get into the agenda itself, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Mr. Ray. He wanted to introduce a new employee. Mr. Ray.
Yes, Your Worship, members of City Council, it gives me great pleasure to announce and introduce to you JP or John Paul Cullen. JP is our new Executive Director of Human Resources at the City. He's built an outstanding career in public service. He's worked with the Ministry of Health, the Regina-Qu'Appelle Health Region. He holds a bachelor and master's degree of arts from the University of Regina, and in his most recent position was with the Regina-Qu'Appelle Health Region. He was the acting Vice President of Human Resources. So he'll be responsible for human resources at the city, all aspects, organizational effectiveness, labor relations, payroll, compensation and benefits, and workplace health and safety. So certainly a major focus of JP will be to fully engage our HR team, ELT, and other leaders and stakeholders, and renew and align our human resource strategies with the OCP and the city's strategic plan. So JP comes to us with highly regarded, with a great track record and excellent references. And we're very pleased to have him join the ELT team and contribute to our success. So please join me in welcoming JP Cullen.
Welcome aboard, Mr. Cullen. So if I could have a confirmation for the agenda, please, a motion for that. Seconder? Councillor Flagel. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we do have a delegation for this special meeting of City Council. Mr. Chad Novak. Mr. Novak, if you could identify yourself, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions of members of council afterwards.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chad Novak, and I am here representing the Saskatchewan Taxpayers Advocacy Group, which is a grassroots organization proudly standing up for the rights of individual taxpayers. I am also here as a candidate for Ward 4 City Council in this fall's municipal election. I want to first say how pleased I am to see that the federal and provincial governments are stepping forward in helping out with some major infrastructure projects in our great city. I am confident that these projects that have been assigned to this funding are both necessary and welcomed by all city employees, all the way from the front line, all the way up through to the top. I am sure that these will make their jobs so much easier and thus provide a more peaceful work environment for everybody. I want to take a moment, however, to express my deep frustration with this City Council and City Administration with regards to today's surprise and special meeting. I am deeply concerned with how this was kept from the public last week in what I can best ascertain as a way to not spoil the public announcement that occurred on Friday. Now, I feel that in the interest of full transparency for all citizens of Regina, including those that are running in this election, this kind of information must be made publicly available as soon as possible. Now, at the latest, this would have been Wednesday, September 14th, 2016, when these issues were considered in a private session. Of course, it would stand to reason that these kind of funding arrangements don't just happen overnight, and therefore it would be safe to assume that this has been known for several weeks, if not months, by City Council and or administration. And thus, I am very disappointed with the lack of transparency on such major expenditures, regardless of where the funds come from. Now, on to the point of the special meeting today, I feel obligated to ask, why was this issue deemed so time-sensitive that it had to have its own special meeting today? Why could it not wait until next City Council meeting scheduled for only 1 week from today? Further to this, I have the following questions that I hope City Administration can provide further information on. Why were these items considered in private session? What is considered so confidential about them? Why does it suggest that the city only applies for funding now? It would sound as though through the funding announcement, that the funding announcement has already been approved by the announcement on Friday. Please elaborate on the full application process. Were the items discussed in the public session on September 14th from the previous, were those items from the previous government's Building Canada Fund? Was the announcement earlier this summer regarding the federal funding for the transit facility also from the previous government's Building Canada Fund? Now, as per the documents before you today, on page 7, you will note very clearly that it states that our reserves are meant to respond to unexpected emergencies and revenue shortfalls. Further to this, it states that reserves enable the city to smooth the effect of spending decisions that impact property taxation, finance unexpected and emergency spending requirements, minimize our use of debt to fund projects, and support the city's credit rating. Now, I have to ask then, how exactly do these projects fall into those categories? And were they included in the 2016 operating or capital budget as approved earlier this year? If they were included in the budget, how were they expected to be funded? Surely projects of this magnitude have been planned for many months, if not years, and thus a funding plan ought to have been determined at that time. Any extra funding that we happen to receive from the federal and provincial governments should then be considered as a windfall for us, and should actually be a boon to our finances, as opposed to a drain, as is outlined before you today. Now, unfortunately, based on the lack of transparency through this entire process, it would appear that this is more about a spending spree by the current city council simply to buy votes.
So now you have one.
Rather than actually, thank you, rather than actually focusing on the long-term needs of our city's core infrastructure. I want to thank you for your time, and I certainly would have more time to talk about, or more to talk about with regards to this issue, but, well, since this was done so last minute, I have not had nearly enough time to dedicate to this matter as it deserves. I will gladly answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Novak, for your presentation. Are there questions of the delegation? Councillor Fraser.
Hey, thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thanks a lot for your presentation. Lots of questions in there. If you could sum up the top one or two that you'd like to ask of administration. Thanks.
That's a hard one. I think the most important questions I have here today is why is this being done on a special meeting today rather than in a week's time? It was considered at the same meeting last week where there was public items addressed. And then the second thing is, kind of give us a better background, not just for me as a candidate, but also for all taxpayers to get a better idea of exactly what the process is. Because we had the announcement on Friday which said, well, here's a whole bunch of money for you. And now in this process today, we're being told that we're going to apply for funding of certain projects. So I just want to make sure that, you know, I mean, it seems a little kind of wishy-washy to me. And I'm quite informed in this whole process. I can only imagine what it is for the average taxpayer out there. So,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Other questions of the delegation? You can return to the gallery,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Novak, and we'll now consider the report. Councillor Fraser, you take the seat, please. Thank you, Councillor Fraser. I'd like to move concurrence and report CR 16-105, which is a public infrastructure fund and the Canada Wastewater Fund proposed projects. If I have a seconder for that, please.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of bits of background, because this is a special meeting of council, and I want to explain why the meeting is being called today and why it's an urgent matter. Under Section 97(1) of the Cities Act, the mayor can call a special meeting of council, and under the authority of the Act, I did that. And the reasons are really quite simple. The federal government and the province signed a partnership agreement last Friday. Both orders of government ask us to convene a meeting of council to give them a resolution outlining the projects that we would be proposing to receive funding under both the transit and then the wastewater fund. It's a requirement. They wanted it done immediately, and I said, well, you know, we do need time to do that. Not knowing the timing of the federal announcement, I convened discussions with the clerk, and we decided to give notice to the public to call it on Monday. We have, under the authority of the Act, under Section 97(1), and I would not invoke this clause, would be to call a meeting in less than 24 hours if it was an emergency. We wanted to give due notice to the public to come and talk about this, but also meet our obligations for funding. I will call a meeting of City Council at 3 o'clock on Sunday morning if I know we're receiving federal money for infrastructure to build our city. And so I think from Friday until Monday is, while short, is long enough for people to understand what's being happening and go forward from there. This is a significant project for us. We've been waiting for some time, and now we have finally been told on Friday that there was a partnership agreement signed between the federal government and province. And I want to very quickly talk about the significant impact this is going to have on our city. And I'm very pleased that the flow of money coming from the first phase of infrastructure funding is significant, and it will have a great impact on us. So with respect to transit and transportation, the report outlines a significant number of projects that will be done. Arcola East bus route, paratransit fleet addition, transit customer service safety, transit scheduling software, transit technology improvements, addition to our fleet, and fleet replacement. The total of this project we will receive will be $27.4 million. That is, no, I got that wrong. Sorry, that's a federal one. With respect to transit, it is $17.2 million. The government of Canada, $8.6. The province of Saskatchewan is not contributing to this. The city of Regina, $8.6 million from our reserves. And with respect to the water, wastewater, again, Mr. Chair, a significant investment and a timely one to be done. The total allocation to Saskatchewan is $89 million. Regina gets $27 million. The government of Canada is contributing $13 million, or 50%. The province, 25%, or $6.8 million. And of course, Regina is 25%, or $6.8 million. Those projects are significant and timely and needed. Upgrades to the McCarthy Boulevard pumping station. We all know what happened over the last couple of years with respect to bypass happening. This will help eliminate that with a third force main being put in at a cost of $15 million. Wastewater storm collection and system rehabilitation, and wastewater collection storm upgrades. Mr. Chair, the contribution by us will be done by a public transit infrastructure fund, $8.6 million, excess through the Asset Revitalization Reserve, and the Canada Water Wastewater Fund, $6.8 million, comes from the Utility Reserve. This is one reason why we have reserves, is to smooth those costs over. We're not going to have a direct hit on taxpayers to fund this any more than we otherwise would. So there's no additional cost to taxpayers. This is wise investment, and it's wise we have reserves to do that. So, Mr. Chair, those are my opening comments. I'd like to close debate, but I do want to stress that no council calls a meeting, special meeting of council, lightly, but when you have an opportunity to receive investment on significant projects that have such a great impact on our city, we'll call them anytime, any place. We gave public notice, and this is good news for the city. We should all be very happy that we have a federal government and province that's investing with us in our infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the administration. There are some reserves being used for our portion of this. Would you give us some information about how reserves are used? They're used for many different purposes, but also where the money comes from for the two reserves that are going to be used for this project.
Mr. Ray?
I'll call on Ms. Sorry. June Schultz, please.
Ms. Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, reserves are used in the city business for a number of reasons. First, they're used to access funds that are available that will reduce the impact of our spending for emergency spending, reduce the impact on on taxes on the citizens, as well as to ensure that we can utilize reserves instead of accessing debt, which is always good and helpful in our reserve or in our credit rating. For these, the reserves that are being identified within this report, the Asset Revitalization Reserve, the majority of the funding that goes into that reserve is based on interest that is earned over and above the budgeted interest that we have every year. And so that money is put aside, that is utilized then for revitalizing assets into the future. On the utility reserve, that funding is a 25-year model that we use for the utility, in which we set the rates that we set on an annual basis that look at what are our future spending over the 25-year period and determine what are the projects that are coming forward, and that we have planned spending and planned money available within the reserve to fund that.
Okay, thank you. So then, just to summarize, the utility reserve comes from the payments that people make on their utilities each month, and those payments are now payback for us because we can use those as well as the interest on that, so that we don't have to raise taxes to do this, and we don't have to borrow money to do this. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Burnett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to rise this morning and just sort of share my thinking on the process to date and all the hard work that's gone in the background of kind of making in this decision today. That when I first got on council 4 years ago, there was a massive undertaking by our administration around developing a whole new official community plan, which kind of set the overarching framework for strategy on where we want to see our city go in the next 30 years. Following out of that, we've been now in the last number of years focusing in on our master plans, which is trying to give us a much more focus and better understanding of the prioritizing these issues of infrastructure need, looking at the financial side associated with these master plans, and certainly coming out of the wastewater master plan as well as our master transportation plan. It's really providing us an understanding of what our priorities are and where we need to go. As mentioned too, I'm very pleased with what's been happening over the years by administration in making sure that we have reserves put aside so that when these opportunities do come along, we're well positioned with not only knowing what our priorities are in these areas, but how we can help finance. I'd also like to acknowledge a number of others around the table here that, Mr. Mayor, your participation on the Big City Mayor's Caucus, you're our representatives that help feed what our priorities are in with the other big cities, and trying to make sure that we've got a single focus when we're going up against the federal government, the provincial government. I know as a retired bureaucrat in the past, they used to be able to play us off against each other because what Vancouver wanted, what Toronto wanted was sometimes different what cities the size of Regina. Also acknowledging Councillor Murray and Councillor O'Donnell and your representation on SUMA. That's another great vehicle where our voice can be heard at the provincial level and represented, and then in turn the executive of SUMA can go forward to FCM. And I think it's those sort of structures that have been focusing. So when finally, after 4 years of all this strategic planning and decision making, because there's no surprise to me anyways that we have issues with transit and transportation or issues with our wastewater. So I'm just very pleased to sort of be able to see and witness all these component parts and pieces coming together, because I'm certainly that strong believer in fail to plan, plan to fail. And I do commend administration for the processes that they put into place. They're certainly putting processes in place where we get the right information so that we can make informed decisions. And certainly, the actual announcement itself would have been much better to have a little more openness and awareness, but sometimes opportunities present themselves. And I think in my experience in the past that we don't want to be the barrier to blocking these opportunities, because we want to make sure we can work at the speed to make sure that these opportunities happen and come to the city. So just wanted to share my thinking. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Burnett. Councillor Flegel.
Thanks, and yeah, definitely rise in support of this. But what I'm wondering about is these projects, and I see there's 9 of them, possibly. Are they ready to go in our world, in the city's world, or are these like a 1 year plan, or what's the guidelines that we have to follow in order to make this all work?
Mr. Ray?
Your worship, members of City Council, yes, these projects are ready to go. The terms of this program are that the projects need to, at the beginning point, it need to be complete by March 31st of 18. There is opportunity to have extension by a project basis for an additional year, but these projects are ready to go, and they were contemplated as part of our, as Councillor Burnett had referenced, from our OCP, are some of the master plans contemplated in our long-range financial planning and capital plan as well. So we're quite excited to proceed with these projects.
Perfect, thanks. That's good news. So for the next 2 years, we've got a pretty busy city going on again here. So the total reserve funding that we're going to look to put forward is $15,587,506. The total cost in front of us today on the public transit and the water wastewater is how much?
Mr.
What
Ray?
are we looking at in total dollars for the projects?
Mr. Ray?
Your worship, members of council, just over $44.5 million.
44.5. So we're probably looking at not quite a quarter, but 30% of the funding. We have to come up with 70% is given to us for nothing. Is that what I'm, can I say that out loud? Is it like a free 70%, like 30 million, roughly $30 million the governments are giving us, and we're going to say no to this?
We're not saying no to this, Councillor Flynn.
No, I know,
We're not
but
saying no
I'm
to
just
this.
saying, I'm just
To be
saying.
clear.
No, I know we're not saying no, but how could we say no when somebody's giving us a bag of money? Is I guess what I'm trying to get at. Is that, am I right in my numbers?
Yes,
Mr. Ray?
yes, very close. So the transit program is 50-50 split between ourselves and the federal government. The water wastewater program is 50% from the federal government, 25% for the provincial, and 25% from the city. So on the one project, we put in a quarter. On the other project, we put in a half. So it's roughly that 30% range. And absolutely, these are critical funding sources to bring our capital planning and our infrastructure deficit, our response to our infrastructure deficit to fruition. So for sure, we wouldn't recommend saying no.
Yes, thank you. Thanks. And I know we wouldn't, but, well, I'm not anyway. Now, one other thing I just want to make a couple of comments about. Councillor Burnett made a couple of comments, but the thing that's missing, and I appreciate the work that Mayor Fougere and Councillor Murray and O'Donnell have done through their SUMA and big cities. This council, every day we're out on the streets, we lobby the federal and provincial governments whenever we see our counterparts in those levels of government. People don't realize that we do that. We see Minister Goodale all the time. We'll see Premier Wall around. We'll see the Minister of Finance. We'll see everybody. We are pumping the tires of our city, and finally the city is reaping the benefits of that from the 11 of us doing the work of pumping up the tires of this city for money to come to us, whether it be through different ways. When we talk about gas taxes, and we talk about all different kinds of incentive taxes to maybe, special events and et cetera, et cetera. All of this is finally coming to a head again, and the federal and provincial governments have come with a little bit of a bag of money, and we're going to take it and run and make it work to the best of the abilities of the city. It's going to enhance the city. It's going to make it better. The one in particular is the upgrades to McCarthy Boulevard Pump Station. I know one councillor is going to be quite happy about that. And the rest of us on council, it just benefits the whole city. So all the transit, the paratransit, everything that goes, again, this bag of money is being offered to us. And I agree with the special council meeting. These things were on the table. They're at the table. Now we just have to bring them to a head because they've said, could you please get this done so that we can proceed? And that's what this meeting is about today. And I appreciate you calling this meeting. So I'll be in full support. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I rise in support of this motion. This is really great news. A couple issues we're dealing with today. Number one, during our last term, or this term of council, there's been the release of untreated sewer water into the Capel watershed. And I think this money today is going to make a tangible difference about that. You know, it's not just money that'll disappear. It's actually going to make a tangible difference on how we're able to deal with that important issue. And of course, transit, something near and dear to my heart. Really, really excited to see this. A couple of the items that stick out. The express route for Arcola East. Right now, to go from the Sanders Schmirler Center to downtown, it takes about 55 minutes. With this express route, it's going to take 15 minutes. So it's my strong belief that people who take transit, when people take transit, we do it because it's our best option. And being able to get from Sanders Schmirler to downtown in 15 minutes means that's going to be the best option for a lot of people. And we should expect that bus to be packed, I think, right from day one. It's really smart planning, and it's really a great opportunity. The question I have is about the split between the three levels of government. For the Canada Wastewater Fund, the split is 50%, 25%, 25%. But for the Public Transit Infrastructure Fund, it's only 50-50. The province hasn't shown up at all. Can someone from administration speak to that? Is that normal?
Mr. Ray?
Your worship, members of council, I'll call on Ms. Hermatiak to respond.
Through your worship, amongst the different provinces of the country, there's varying splits. We're not the only province that we're not the only city that the province has not contributed to PTIF. It varies amongst the provinces. So I don't know that there is a normal for these particular funds.
But there are other provinces in Canada that haven't been part of the mix for the transit money?
There
Ms.
are.
Harmachuk?
Okay. Okay, thanks for that. So one just parting comment, and that is that our new federal government is actually lining up to spend literally tens of billions of dollars on new public infrastructure. And this time the city, when it comes to the transit money, this time the city was willing, or after this vote, hopefully will be willing and able to step up and make sure that Regina's fair share comes to the province. But ultimately, when we're thinking about these projects, we have to think about opportunity cost. And as that new federal money comes, we have to make sure, we have to be strategic and smart and forward thinking to make sure that Regina does get its fair share. The hope is that in future rounds of funding that the province will be part of that mix. But again, kudos to administration and hopefully council after this vote that we're willing to make sure that Regina gets the money that we have coming to us. So thanks a lot. Look forward to supporting this. Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Councillor Murray?
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and I'll keep my comments relatively short. These funds are badly needed, and of course we know that. I'm not saying anything we don't know, but I think it's really important that we recognize those individuals, those men and women who are elected officials across the board, federally and provincially, who stood up and came to the plate for Regina to help us into this position. Obviously, we make some concessions, having special meetings in order to do what we have to do, and I understand that. We don't like doing it, but at the end of the day, this is an important funding announcement for us. And so I just really want to make sure that we highlight the fact that this happened because we have support from our federally elected people and our provincially elected people who see the needs that Regina have and have brought those forward. So just a big thank you on that one. So thanks, Your Worship. I will be supporting.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you. Remembering that other orders of government have the ability to generate revenue far differently than we do, I applaud the notion that we have reserves that allow us to handle this. Well done to staff and well done to council. I have some questions on the transit first, if I could, please. This is a whole lot of buses, so that's really good, but there's usually a bit of a lag time before when they arrive and so on. Can I understand when these would actually be in service? Does that meet the criteria of the 2 years, et cetera?
Mr. Onright?
Oh, sorry. Your worship, I'll ask
Mr. Ray?
Mr. Bells to respond.
Mr. Bell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've already talked to our producer of our buses, and they are okay with the purchase orders and our numbers that we have. So the majority of the buses will be here before March 2018. We have asked for extension for a small order to be for 2019 to be more strategic, that our fleet has a number of years of buses coming in. So they are on board for our purchase.
Sorry, perfect. Thank you for that. I want to ask a question about paratransit. So there are 10 buses coming in and part of the paratransit fleet. One, is paratransit not a provincial program?
Mr. Onright?
Through your worship, part of it is some of our funding does come from the province for paratransit.
So the part that doesn't come is capital? Is that correct?
Mr. Onright?
I'm going to ask Mr. Bells to answer that.
Thank you.
Mr. Bells?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the province does share both capital and operating with this project. They are helping us with the purchase of a bus also this year. This additional bus is just funded through this source through the PTIP program.
Okay, thanks for
Just
that.
on a point of order, just Councillor Donald, and you'll know this, the province actually created the program and asked us to participate. They started the program. They're withdrawing their funding over time. Councillor Donald.
Thanks for that clarity. I agree with you. I want to ask a little bit about McCarthy Pumping Station and so on. In a simple format so that I can understand, what will this force main do, please?
Who's going to take that one?
Through your worship, I'll ask Mr. Doney to provide some specifics about what that project will accomplish.
Through you, your worship, this third force main will reduce the risk of wastewater being bypassed at McCarthy, and so we can pump it to the wastewater treatment plant.
So if, again, testing my memory, in terms of the new wastewater treatment plant, there are also sewage lagoons out there. Does this allow us to put some of that storm water, into one of those lagoons that may be not used for other purposes now?
Through you, your worship, yes, during wet weather events, we can pump wastewater to the lagoons and they can be stored until the treatment plant can treat the wastewater.
Good, thought so. Thank you. I want to ask a little bit about the relining program and so on. So the dollars that are allocated, is it strictly toward relining of existing pipes structure, or is there something else involved?
Ms. Gizmo, do you want to take that?
Through your worship, it's a suite of projects of lining, of which the lining piece is one of the main pieces of it, but Mr. Doney may be able to expand on some of the other elements of that project.
Through you, your worship, yes, this is to reline existing pipelines, and we focus on the pipelines that are high risk. So those large trunks that, if they were to fail, they would cause a large decrease in level of service. So we focus on those pipelines.
Perfect. Thanks very much. I think this is a great opportunity. I feel rather privileged to be here today to accept the cash. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Donald. I'm wondering if Councillor Bryce has any comments at all.
Sure. I just wanted to add my thank you, first of all. Sorry I couldn't be there because of a work commitment, but I also wanted to say that I'm grateful that we're getting money from the federal government for these projects. I'll just add my support to it, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just make two further points briefly. The first is I appreciate the structure of this granting program. These are our priorities here. These are not priorities that were dictated to us by some other level of government. I appreciate the fact that the program has been flexible and allowed the local level to bring forward its priorities. The second point is in relation to reserves. Once again, we see why reserves are important. In this case, we're able to avoid, because we have reserves, additional debt. That means that we preserve our good, solid credit rating. So we see that the value of reserves in helping us preserve the good credit rating and showing how the city is well managed in terms of its financial structures. I'm very pleased to support this, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Fundura. Councillor Fundura, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a great news. We've been waiting for this for a while. Before I make my comments, I would like to, through Your Worship, ask a question or two on the Print Transit bus fleet addition. Would this mean that this adding an extra Print Transit bus would decrease the refusal rate? Would something like this be put towards that?
Mr. Onright?
Through your worship, I'll ask Mr. Bells to comment on that.
Mr. Bells.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the initiative is to increase our spare ratio. Currently, we have 28 buses in service out of the 32, which is only a 12.5% spare ratio. The request is to get us up to a fifth additional spare ratio so we can do preventative maintenance. So that's the main focus, but there may be opportunity once we see the fifth bus in service that we can focus on the refusal rates. But the more importantly is that we have our 100% service initiative out there with the 28 buses. That will keep our refusal rates down.
That's a great news. Thank you. Then continue with the transit customer service. I know it's described and it's explained pretty well what this is, but I'd like to just ask a couple of questions. There's a mention in here about driver safety. There's a huge impact on drivers if, there may be the seats not working, the injuries happening. What does that mean to our efficiencies and effectiveness of our fleet? I know we're looking at wheels and bodies, but human addition to making transit work properly and fleet working is that human aspect. Through your worship, what does that mean to us? What's the question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this initiative is looking at our bus operator seats on our paratransit fleet. It's a high-end seat that is more adjustable for the drivers. Again, drivers go into a different bus on a daily basis. They have different weight capacities to them. So the extra seats will help us more on our focus on safety for our driver with shoulder straps, seat belts with it. But it also then it helps for the seat bottoming out if they're hitting any dips, crossing any intersections. So it's important for us to also look at our drivers and our safety aspect of our workforce.
That's good to hear. Thank you for that. And just a quick question to your worship on the QPAD securement, and I'm trying to figure out what that means. What is that all about, your worship?
You want to repeat the question, Councillor?
It's the QPAD securement system.
Okay, Mr. Bells.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our conventional transit system has two spots for mobility devices. One's forward-facing and one's rear-facing on our buses. It's the naming of our products from our vendors. One's called a Q-Strength or a securement system, a Quantum, and the other one's a QPod. It's just different naming. One's forward-facing, one's rear-facing. It just it's an arm that drops in and secures the mobility device to the vehicle instead of having 3-point or 4-point systems. It's just better for the customer, and it's quicker for our drivers to put a mobility device on our bus and then stay on time performance.
Thank you, worship, for that. So a quick comment. This is a timely influx of cash coming to us here, especially as we're seeing an increase in the ridership. So having the extra express routes and all these wonderful things and getting some cash to help the citizens move around, leave the cars at home and get to work quicker. Our downtown will be more vibrant. We don't have to worry about the extra spots. So, your worship, I'm definitely supporting this. This is a great news. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fundura. There's no other speakers. I'd like to close debate. Councillor Fraser, if you could take the seat again, please. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I probably just to have a few closing comments and thank members of council for their firstly agreeing to the meeting and of course their positive comments on what is clearly a good news story for our city. With respect to what we're looking at here today, we're looking at a federal government that's going to be putting over the next several years $60 billion in infrastructure. That is a remarkable amount of injection into our economy to continue to build our cities and our communities across the country. And it is incumbent upon every municipality, and we have done a great job through our OCP and our master plans to identify projects that we need foundationally to move our city forward. Transit is a key element of moving our city forward, as is our water and wastewater. And members of council have very eloquently told us what those projects are like and what those impacts are going to be. What's significant here is that our participation in these two programs will not put an extra burden on taxpayers because of the use of reserves, and it will also ensure that we don't use more debt, which I think is also significant for us, but we also can participate in this. But clearly this is a timing issue. The timing in process of decisions by the federal government and the province is different than ours. We're not party to agreements between those two levels of government. We're told we'd like to see a resolution of council that is a requirement for us to have our applications going. Thus the reason for today. The report talks about $2 billion of infrastructure backlog. That's a number that's been known for quite some time. And I want to repeat notes I've said before and other members of council have talked about our inability as an order of government to fund those without draining taxpayers completely. 8 cents of every tax dollar collected by all orders of government go to cities to fund projects that are absolutely critical and foundational to the health and public safety of our residents. I'm very proud of us being able to act so quickly and nimbly on this one to respond to what is a good news story, and I know members of council will support this, and hopefully residents of the city will be pleased that we've acted so quickly in providing great public service to them. Thank you. So with no other speakers, I'm going to call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. A motion to adjourn. Councillor Flagel? Councillor Bryce moves adjournment.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great day.